Hello, KCIW listeners, and welcome to Curry Cafe, where we put together a panel of volunteers and guests who discuss various topics from whimsical and fun to more serious subjects.
Well, as Rick just said, we have a panel of guests, but what he didn't say, and I haven't noticed that's a pre-recorded thing, and I guess I never listened to it. He is supposed to be saying expert guests, people who have we have searched the entire community to find these people who know what they're talking about.
Okay.
And today we're going to talk about Labor Day, or labor, but basically Labor Day. Now, Labor Day, you know it's Labor Day when you turn on the morning news and the first 10 minutes are file footage of airports with people standing in line and some guy that's getting paid way too much talking about flight delays and how crowded the airports and the roads are, and it'll be the busiest Labor Day since whenever. For some reason or other, they seem to think we need to know that. So let's get started by going around the table here and having everybody introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Brett Cecil. I live in Port Orford, and I'm currently running for state representative in the 1st District.
Okay, and I'm Rick McNamer, volunteer here at KCIW. And one quick note, too, if anybody out there if you're listening, I hope you're listening, you can text in a question or comment at our text line, 541-661-4098. And as Ray says, the operators are standing by. I will be the operator today. So go ahead.
Okay, I'm Robert O'Sullivan, and my labor roots go back far. My dad was buried with a ITU, International Typographical Union, 65-year pin. And they had pensions that helped me grow up, and he was 65 when I was born. It was a rather unusual childhood. But anyway, I have labor roots, which are, I guess, congenital, and been in California. I was active in Democratic politics in a lot of ways a long time. And in my late 40s, I became a high school teacher and was involved in labor as a local rep from the union and that sort of thing as well. Been in Brookings since 2015.
So this 65-year pin means that he worked in this job for 65 years?
Yes. And
what was the job?
He was a typesetter on big old linotype machines. In fact, we were talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
Yes, but people listening don't know that. So.
You might have to explain that.
Well,
that's a historical job.
Okay,
that's
so
for sure.
a linotype machine is basically you pour lead in and it spits out, and it must be. I can't imagine doing that for 65 years.
Well, he did, and that partially, I guess, because he had me late in his life.
Oh.
But I visited him sometimes at work, and I just remember what an awful setting it seemed to be. Noisy, lead, smells, steam, and part of the history of labor in this country has to do with making work safe. And nowadays, it sort of is because there are agencies like OSHA and there are other things going on. But workers' compensation, which is an important thing for anybody injured on his job, didn't really come in until the early parts of the 20th century.
Yeah.
And even though there were terrible fires, there were terrible massacres and other things happening related to working people, they very often didn't have any real health protection for them.
I think probably today, jobs like you described are probably rarer and rarer, even in manufacturing situations. I think they're more, not necessarily sterile, but they're cleaner, and certainly there's concern for the workers because they have to be concerned for the workers.
And thanks to the unions for that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many things today which we really don't know how safe they are. Like I just saw a big report about all of the sewage waste that is being used as fertilizer. And in the process, what is it, BPAs, the plastic
Yes.
Oh,
thing is getting into massive amounts of fertilizer being distributed on farms, and how that affects farm workers. And sometimes it's very destructive to the animals. And so how safe is that environment? And the meatpacking plants that might get involved in all of that happening.
They've come a long way, though, since, what was the name? The Jungle?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
But
What was the name of that book?
The Jungle by Upton.
Oh, the Jungle was the name of the book. Okay, yes. If anybody out there has not read that book, I'd suggest you do read it, and then you probably become a vegetarian or something very quickly.
Had to do with the stockyards in Chicago,
Yeah.
which were a pretty awful place.
And the funny thing is, the book is a lot about how badly the meat was treated. The stuff was dropped on the floor in the sawdust, and it got picked up and reused, and they were wiping the maggots off. Anyway, but the book was not, his intention was not to expose the meatpacking industry. His intention was to point out the labor inequities, which I guess he took care of both of them, because it was the federal agency that inspects food now came about primarily because of that book.
I can't say specifically because of that, but it certainly raised the issue
Yeah, well,
publicly in ways that had never been issued before.
Very
raised
shocking, yeah.
before. So
well, I'm sure a lot of the great stuff that we have out there nowadays, it might anger some people, but again, brought about by unions, organized labor, if you will. And yeah, there's been problems there. We can talk about that too. But health, safety of the employees.
it's shocking, some statistics from the 19th century about how many people were killed on job sites. Just enormous numbers.
Yes.
And
Yep.
and it's still, there still are issues. But one part of our history is when the country started to become rich. Well, it became rich partially because of slavery and the trade that was involved in all that. It was often a three-way thing involving sugar and food and other things. But what happened when this country was starting to become a place producing a lot of clothing, a lot of sugary products, and that it was starting to have a surplus. And much of the way foreign policy developed was related to American politicians saying, hey, we're producing too much stuff. We got to find some international markets. And that awful period involving the Spanish-American War and all that, getting back to talking a bit about my father, when I was reading up some for this interview, I saw that the International Typographical Union was a supporter of the Spanish-American War. And I wondered why. And but among other things, they said, well, if we become in control of the Philippines, the language there is going to change from Spanish to English because we'll be in control, and that will keep up a lot of good jobs for printers, preparing textbooks for Filipinos learning English. Strange. But also during that period, there was a lot that made for heavy capital to be almost unfettered in the way they did things, especially as the oil industry and the textile industries and the steel industry and railroads all became very, very strong. And curiously, part of their becoming extremely strong had to do with the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment related to the end of slavery, but in the way the Supreme Court in this country settled cases and determined things, a corporation was a person, and a corporation was somehow getting the same sort of protection that ex-slaves were getting. And most of the 14th Amendment in the 19th century cases were not at all about slavery, but about the right of giant trusts to go unfettered in what they did, and which made for a lot of awful things happening to labor.
Yeah, yeah. The my particular industry is the railroad,
Okay.
and now I had a thought, and then of course it left me. Well, let me go back. My bona fides, I guess, would that was I was in a union called the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way, kind of along. We were basically track workers, and that was great. I mean, it provided me a good living, me and my family, and health care, and I'm glad and proud I was there. But like you said, Bob, the railroad industry, pretty much there. I mean, there was a lot of wonderful, I guess, building across the United States. That was a big deal. I admire the people that were doing that, but a lot of people fell by the wayside.
For sure.
You can go back to, this is, of course, pre-Labor Day, but the Chinese were horribly treated and basically built most of that railroad on the western side anyway.
Yeah, and on the other side were a lot of immigrants, including Irish,
Very true.
in
Very true.
large numbers.
Right.
Yeah, in the days of slavery, when you had the option of using an Irish labor or slave labor, you picked the Irish labor because if the Irishman got injured or hurt or killed on the job, you just get another one. If a slave got injured or hurt or killed, you had to buy another one. So it was economically sensible to put those Irish, and not just the Irish, I'm sure, but a lot of it.
I always kind of looked at it like a pendulum swinging, like you said, turn of the century from the 1800s to the 1900s. I mean, the big industrial revolution, basically. I think that was it. Yeah, we were going gangbusters and strong and building this with steel
And looking
even
for
lumber.
markets all over the world.
What was that?
Looking for markets all over the world.
Oh, yes. But again, at the expense of working people. And then I think that's why it started. People wanted to start organizing, making things safer, better wages, living conditions. I think that's obviously a good thing. And there's still trouble back and forth going. Right now, unions are, I think, few and far between. It's getting kind of
11% of the workforce right now, where it used to be as much as 30%.
yeah.
Although it's interesting, I saw a poll just recently that said public acceptance of looking favorably on unions has been going up. It's like to 67%.
Oh, really?
Way up.
That I didn't know.
And that
Because
was
that-
just this
I'm
last
seeing
week.
even in the 70s today, I'm seeing reports on that. In the 70 percentile.
Wow,
Oh, wow.
that's
People are
good news.
favoring-
That is good news.
Good news.
And hotel workers in Chicago are on strike right now.
Oh,
I was noticing that today.
okay. Oh,
So our unions are working for the people that work for them.
yeah, yeah.
And curiously, they even help raise the issues for non-union workers to
Right.
their salaries necessarily
Oh, yeah,
go
of course,
up.
'cause you have-
but
yeah.
and in California, this rather dramatic ballot thing that passed saying that all workers in fast food places had to get $15 an hour. Is enormous, in fact, on the whole economy when you think of all the people in California.
So does that amount to paying another 50 cents for your Big Mac?
I'm
Or
sure it
is
does.
is it a big deal for prices?
Well, I mean, I'm guessing. I'm no economist. That's probably one of the last things I am. But for me, I'll gladly pay a little more.
Me too.
For the benefit of others. I mean, but not everybody's that way.
No.
If you're really pinching pennies, I suppose. But I kind of look at it as good for everybody.
Well, that's why I said 50 cents. It's,
Well,
I would
pick a
imagine that
number.
it's in a fast food joint, you're not really adding a great deal onto the cost of a Happy Meal or whatever because of this. But I know the owners are saying,
How can we do this?
I'm sorry?
Nothing.
Oh, okay.
I was just sort of echoing what you were saying.
Well, we heard a lot of the same complaints when they outlawed smoking in bars and restaurants and airplanes. All those places that we outlawed smoking, it's like, this is going to kill our business.
Yeah, people
It's
won't.
actually been quite the opposite.
You know, one of the type of things I heard that was happening was like some pizza chains were stopping their driving people, delivery people, and letting it go to independent drivers of the various
like
sorts
you
out there.
Uber type, or
Yeah,
well, I see
yeah.
a lot of these
Yeah.
dash
Well,
delivery dash things.
And so they're complicating the employment of their workers who used to drive, but it's still a tough go if you don't have a union, obviously, because of other union protections. A shop steward who's looking out for you,
Right.
people who are more committed to a long-term commitment with a company because its wages and benefits are decent, but anyway, there's a little more favorability toward unions, but there's probably a long way to go before they're as powerful as they could be.
Well, and one of the powers that I see with the unions, many of them contact me as a candidate
Yes.
running that want to know what my stance is, or would I work with them in some of their policies that they want to get before the legislature.
And of course, you tell them how you can't possibly do that, right?
Every way I can.
That's huge, though. I mean,
Right.
that's a real big deal.
And that's something that our unions do.
yes.
What type of
they
things
bridge
have you
that.
heard from them when they've contacted you?
Just wanting to know that I would consider supporting
Them.
any
Okay,
of their ideas and their policies coming
Sure.
up. And they're looking for a way to bridge that gap between the legislators and their union and their workers. So any kind of legislation that they would want to get before the legislators, that has to come obviously through the legislature, and they're the ones that are there bridging that gap and making that happen. So that's one of the many things that unions do.
And back on the health and safety factor, when I first got hired on the Southern Pacific in 1979, and I mean back right before I got hired on, they had just come out with now all the employees were had to wear hard hats, but before that everybody was out there in baseball caps and tennis shoes, and that's just how it was. And even some of the employees were mad at that. Hard hats, then safety glasses, then ear protection.
No more open-toed shoes on the
Steel-toed
work side,
shoes,
right?
And then some of it even lagged while I was working. One of our jobs was to dump ballast or rock, if you will, with these railroad cars, and the dust just comes pouring out of that thing, man. That was one of the worst jobs we had. But then they found out later that was full of silica, and a lot of people were getting sick from that.
Silicosis.
So now, my point is, it just thanks to the unions and OSHA, we had to change on that, wear the masks and other protective gear.
And OSHA is relatively recently, I forget exactly when, but like 1970s maybe?
Yeah, I
60s.
don't know.
Wasn't it a Nixon thing, or was that the EPA that I'm thinking of?
The EPA was Nixon. OSHA, it's a little blurry. I'm not going to.
Kind of along in that era, I believe.
Yeah, and
I was a toddler.
I wasn't. But and unions have had on and off enormous impact on Democratic politics, but not Republican politics.
Well, I think the impact was negative from Republican politics, pretty much.
for obvious reasons. But
Yeah.
The curious thing is so many working people still vote against their own interests and somehow hook into the right-wing thing about race, about this becoming
The
a
identity
nation.
politics.
Yeah, and that I saw it back in the Reagan days in California.
Well, I think that's when it started. The working man kind of left, and man meaning everybody. That's just there were a lot of women out there doing the working.
I retired.
Worker.
I retired from the Alaska State Troopers. We had a union, and one year there was a guy running for governor who was pretty inept. He was not very good, but he was very pro-gun or something that the troopers really liked. I don't remember what it was exactly, but his big thing was he was going to reduce the budget across the board by 10%. And I'd be talking to guys in the squad room, and who wanted to vote for him, and I said, "Do you ever look at what's on the top of your paycheck? That's the state of Alaska. You want that cut by 10%?" And actually, some of them said, "Oh, that wouldn't bother me." But that was a very tough place to be a union member because
I bet.
these guys were all Republican, pretty much, and they didn't think that cops should have unions and we should be dedicated and all that. So it was tough to get stuff done
Yeah.
because nobody cared if it got done or not. But you talk about the unions contacting politicians. The politicians love to get our endorsement. From what they used to tell us, that it was worth like a whole bunch more than the Carpenters Union or something to have the State Troopers Union supporting them.
Well, I had a little note here. Ideally, and it's gone back and forth, like I said, the pendulum. I kind of use the Detroit auto industry for an example of, I think at that time, they kind of negotiated themselves out of a job way back when. Now, this is just off the top of my head, my memory. And because they were also putting out, at the time, I guess it was 60s or 70s maybe, kind of inferior products compared
Kind
to
of.
Well, okay. I wanted to be easy. Raise the auto guy. I didn't want him to jump down my throat. But anyway, the Japanese automobiles, all of that stuff.
And the auto companies blame the unions that they had to cut costs.
Oh yeah.
Because
I
the
think
union was.
corporate greed is always a big factor there. But ideally, if you want the company you're working for, you want profits for them, right? But we also want decent wages. I'm looking big on decreasing environmental damage, especially with the coal industry and the gas industry. We still can't cut these things off, like right now and not have it anymore.
Right.
We have to kind of ease our way into it. But I don't see that happening. It's always a lot of bickering and fighting and.
Someday it will probably happen. When you mentioned
Not
cars,
in my lifetime, probably, but hopefully.
When cars became very popular and everybody could have a car, all of a sudden the people that made tack for horses and wagons and things like that
Buggy
were
whips.
losing their job. Buggy whips, exactly, yeah.
Right.
I always talk about the guy who used to make Clovis spear points way
Okay.
back when. And he was third generation Clovis spear point maker and was training his son to take over the job. And then some reason or other, people didn't want Clovis spear points anymore now. If it was up to some people, he'd still be out there chipping away at those stones. But
And he was
Just to keep-
invested in that quarry to make those.
Right.
exactly, just to keep a job.
Brotherhood of the Clovis
Yes, yeah,
Spear
we-
Point.
Yeah.
Now I think they call it transitioning.
There you
So
go.
when you're moving from a gas-powered vehicle to electric power,
And
you can't change everybody at the same time.
No, you
Right.
can't.
But
No,
when
you
the
can't.
goal, the target is to make that transition to something, and in the meantime, something else may come up. So
Yeah.
we're constantly in transition in some
are.
way or another.
And you brought up smoking a while back. Now, and granted, it's pardon me for any smokers out there, but it's a horrible habit. We know it. But boy, did they, as far as smoking, that came out pretty radical. Because when I grew up, I think all of us grew up, it was the cool, sexy thing to do. I smoked for a while.
I smoked a pipe for a while.
But it came
Did
out.
the Duke ever smoke on screen?
The Duke.
John-
You talking
John
about
Wayne?
John Wayne?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, yes.
On screen. I know he
Oh,
did
on
in real
screen.
life,
Oh,
but I can't
well.
recall him ever doing that.
I don't remember.
I don't know. I don't
okay.
know. But the anti-smoking came out pretty hot and heavy, and I guess it should have. But boy, I felt sorry for the people. They were just banished to some little cold alley to do their cigarettes. But maybe that was the right thing. I don't know.
They still are. You see, in fact, you see them out here in our alley. They're
Oh yeah.
smoking cigarettes.
Oh yeah.
So-
Right.
Well, our government goes to great lengths to help people quit smoking. I mean, they'll pay for the smoking cessation program for you if you're
do they?
interested in
I
quitting.
didn't even know that.
So our state health department's
And
pretty
it will
pretty
cost you
involved
like
in-
hell if you want to smoke. I cannot understand how.
Yeah, $10 a pack.
Yeah, good grief, that's car payment almost.
Well, I have some pretty good contact friends and family that still do it.
Really.
But it's still a choice.
It's a choice. I know. Maybe they'll set up a smoking labor union. Anyway, yeah. And if you have any questions or comments, text in, please, 541-661-4098. And then when you do, please let us know where you're coming from or texting from. That's always exciting.
Yeah.
Good to know.
So
Our operator's sitting down right now, but he is.
I'm
ready to take
glancing
your call.
at the phone.
Would that
ready.
be euphemistically or standing by?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good enough. So, okay. And a little history, we were talking about this too before the show, about the beginning of Labor Day was the President Grover Cleveland, and I have to dig up the notes here. 1894, that was the first national holiday. And years before the New York,
Wait,
I think.
wait.
Go ahead.
1894?
Yes, that was the first recognized national Labor Day
I
holiday.
have 1842. but
Well,
maybe
I
that's something.
think what you're talking about is there were some,
Local ones.
New York
okay.
City, Chicago, Detroit, the bigger
All right.
cities wanted to, and that influenced Mr. Cleveland, I suppose, to get that going on the national holiday level.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the major changes and successes of labor had to do with terrible disasters. The Shirtwaist Fire in New York, many of the buildings where people were working in garment-related industries were 7 or 8 or 9 feet tall, or 9 stories tall.
Okay.
When that happened, and the ladders from the fire department could only reach the 7th story.
And the doors were all locked.
And the doors were supposed to be able to push outside and not be locked during work hours, but they were push inside and locked. And also there were some politically powerful massacres of strikers in Colorado and Wyoming, and interestingly, there were
Henry Ford knocked off a couple of strikers.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
One or two.
One or two. Anyway, and massive events in the Northwest involved international workers of the world, and there were people who said, if you really want a strong union, you need a strong national movement, such as they were trying to bring about.
Yeah.
Well, many laborers were more inclined to be attracted to a route that included his own particular, if he was a carpenter or plumber or occupation, and that really divided labor in a lot of ways. And in fact, we now say AFL-CIO, but they used to be the two distinctly different ways of organizing. The CIO wanted industry-wide representation against auto workers or steel workers or whatever, and they became pretty powerful because they took that route. While the building trades ones were successful in their own ways, but it was so much if your local of the plumbers was dominated by one ethnic group and their relatives, others were excluded in the process, and that happened a lot. And there was also a bigger question of relation to world issues. A lot of world issues really are impact on labor, but whether people should have gotten involved in World War I or lots of other things were pretty serious issues. And the American labor movement had kind of ties with the Democratic Party, but at the other hand, it wasn't as powerful as might be the Labour Party in Britain for a long time, for example.
Yeah, and speaking of world, this is a world problem that's still going on, I believe. And of course, I'm sure they can't unionize, but I think of the countries that are doing the child labor, making garments, tennis shoes. I think is one
going
of the
down in deep holes and wells to get.
Well, I mean, children working long hours in hot or terrible conditions.
I forget
which was happening here in this country. I think many years ago,
and still
Bob used
works,
to talk about the
somewhat
pork industry, if you will, or in those. Yeah.
And we don't have to rewind time to see that happening.
Well,
the governor of Arkansas recently has signed legislation letting children
that
come
hurts.
back into
Yeah.
very dangerous work situations.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Because
that
we
it's-
need 14 and 15-year-olds working in
Right.
meat packing
right.
houses again. I guess we don't bring enough tax money. We need to start getting children to.
Yeah,
Pay
that
taxes,
was-
good idea.
for us.
That one shocked me.
We can't have them just laying around going to school and stuff like that.
Learning
No.
things, right?
Come on, 14, you're old enough to start producing.
And if I'm not
Yeah, just-
mistaken, a little different off the subject a little bit, but I thought Arkansas also, didn't they reduce the marriage age?
I think they did, yeah, to something like
There's
14.
another subject. Yeah.
That's pretty bizarre. Okay, I just wanted to throw that in.
As long as the whole country doesn't say, I'm Arky, you're Arky.
Yeah. Well, we're,
I think, we may have kids going back to work, but I don't think they're going to be working the 12 and 7 like they did back in the day. And it wasn't just kids, people working in the mines for 12 hours a day, breathing that air. And it's funny how many of them did not like or still don't like the idea of wearing masks and things like that, and just think that's silly to have the safety regulations. We had a crew working on our house a few years ago, and they pretty much had to rebuild a garage wall and some other things, and they none of them were wearing hearing protection or dust masks or anything, and they were working with this kind of this siding that's so popular around here now that's like is cement, and it puts out an awfully toxic and awfully bad dust, and it is incredibly fine. It's not like sawdust; it just creates clouds. And these guys weren't wearing masks or anything. And I asked one of them one day, "Doesn't the company require it?" "Oh yeah, they do, but nobody says anything."
yeah, easy to slough off, I guess.
Yeah. The other thing about this crew, my wife was putting things out in the garage for them to snack on, and at the end of the day, they'd still be there. And so she asked one of the boss one day why they weren't eating them. This guy said, "Oh, that stuff's too healthy." And I'm talking about like, I'm not talking about celery sticks or something. This was stuff that was not too healthy. But so then she started putting out Oreos and like that.
Oh, there.
Doritos.
coated with the dust that they were
Exactly.
creating.
Yeah,
Oh, well.
yeah.
Wow. Hey, well, we're halfway through. I just want to let everybody know you are listening to KCIW here in Brookings, Oregon, 100.7 FM, all volunteer radio station, and this operator's still standing by, waiting for a text, 541-661-4098.
Hey, let me tell you another quick story about these workers. I was there was one of them working on something overhead, putting in the new garage door or something, and he's chipping away at something with a chisel or something, and he's getting pieces of wood kicked back in his face all the time. And I was standing at my workbench, so I had some safety glasses there, and I went over and handed them to him, and he says, "Oh, I have some in the truck. Don't worry about it." So,
Yeah. However, like I said, I guess if some of the railroad workers could still, they'd be wearing baseball caps and tennis shoes. I don't know.
And those regulations, I hear lots of complaints about that. We need to reduce the regulations. But then when you get something
Yes.
in your eye or lose a foot,
Yeah.
all of a sudden it's a problem that nobody told you
Right.
that it's a problem.
yeah.
Historically, the biggest strides for labor were done during the days of the New Deal, the Roosevelt presidency. The National Labor Relations
point,
Board was created, the mechanisms for unions to get recognized and appeal processes, and other major goals were a result of the terrible impact of the Depression on working people, especially. And,
Yeah.
And but some people are still trying to fight those advances, and we still have things like the quote right to life, right to work initiatives that basically are saying that people should be able to take a free ride on the gains that are brought by union people working together.
That right to work, and we talked about that a little before the show, but I'm still unclear on some of that. It's basically, let's say you're working for a corporation, Corporation B, whatever, and there's a union. Mm-hmm. You have a choice to either work for the union, pay dues, or not work for the union.
Well, in many cases, you can say, I'm not a union member, but you have to pay the dues anyway. But the right to work idea is that they wouldn't have to pay the dues anyway,
Okay.
and therefore really weaken the union.
I just, I don't know. I
And
mean,
of course, they get the benefits that the union
Yeah.
is providing anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a teacher that, just worked through strikes just because he didn't believe in striking.
Okay.
Well, he was not greeted very friendly by me and other teachers in the process.
And how long, Bob, were you teachers union? In the
23 years or
Okay.
so. Yeah.
Okay. Boy, and it's funny why is it that there's been a mood? Teachers are not treated very well lately. It doesn't seem to me.
Well, they haven't been for a long time.
I don't think
Oh,
that's
they
new.
wanted more money or more, and all of a sudden, all the people on Fox News were saying, "Well, my mother was a teacher, and it was a part-time job. She gets home by 3 o'clock."
Yeah,
And
I mean, again, I'm a product of the public. Maybe we all are public education.
too.
I look back on it pretty fondly. We all have issues, of course, but it saddens me that they're created as almost negative.
Yeah,
these
there's
days.
a lot of the mentality that people that can do, people can't teach.
yes, yeah.
Woody- was that Woody
I
Allen?
heard that.
I think
too.
You can't
people who
teach, you teach, Jim.
Okay, we got it.
Yeah.
All right.
And in some societies, it's one of the highest respected professions.
I feel it should be.
But part of it has to do with payment and that. In my own personal case, I had no children and was married to a lawyer, so I didn't necessarily have to make a whole lot of money.
Okay.
But and I'm glad I did, and I made some really positive impacts on a lot of kids' lives, I think.
Right.
But
Wonderful.
I was, even after 20 years of teaching, I was making something like $25, $30 an hour, which wasn't all that much.
I have several. For some reason or other, there seems to be a lot of teachers here. I have several friends who are retired teachers, and when they talk about their work, they talk about what they did for the kids, and that was their job to get these kids to learn algebra or whatever.
Well,
Yeah.
there's nothing quite like seeing the success like a year's later. I don't run into former students much in Brookings, but I certainly did in Oakland.
Uh-huh.
And, they were impacted in one way or another by me, and they liked it, and they remembered it always.
And I have a lot of fond memories of my teachers from the past. I do.
I have some negative ones, too. but-
Well, so do I. But most of them are positive.
Yeah.
They really are. Yeah. And then with the teachers, the big problem I realize, or I think now, is because the wages are so low, where they want to teach, they can't even live near the school that.
Yeah, and some school districts, especially in California, are trying to build their own housing for their teachers, and that's a good idea because
I think we might be seeing more of that in the near future.
out of
Building
necessity.
housing.
I know we have that issue in our own county here.
Yeah. Right.
Is retaining teachers,
Yeah.
just
Right.
not being able to find a place to live, much less being able to afford it, but finding a place to start with.
I have a friend who's looking for a house who is ready to spend $500,000, and they can't find anything that's worth living in.
Right. Well, that's another. We've done a show on that. That's probably another show coming up.
Yeah.
Housing, and
Put that on your list.
I will. I've got that down. So, hey, everybody, we're still waiting for that first text. If you're out there with questions or comments, 541-661-4098.
It's not any radio station you can have textual intercourse with.
This one you can. I think Bob was waiting for that one.
Yes.
I used it once before.
That's good. Still works.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was
you
your
may not be able
softball.
to get certain books out of the library, but you can have textual intercourse with us.
Right on.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so I guess for most people, Labor Day, even me being a laborer, if you will, in my life, Labor Day weekend, it was just coming up. Do we really think about most of the... I had to look up myself what initiated Labor Day. I had no idea until a day ago looking up some research.
All I know is I got double time and a half if I worked.
And
And being a job that
And-
required people to be out there, I frequently did work
Right.
on holidays, and people felt sorry for me. Oh, you have to work on... Yeah, it's really
wait till my
tough.
paycheck comes in. I know. Yeah, the railroad was the
That's
same
the worst
thing.
part of being retired. I get same pay
Well,
for holidays as I get.
Yeah, we should be getting a pretty good increase today, working on Labor Day weekend.
Yeah.
The high wages.
Well, we're getting holiday wages for this. Huh?
Right on.
Right.
Right on.
So Bob did mention the difficulties that workers, tradespeople especially, have gone through over the years to make sure that we have protections. Right?
Yeah. A lot of
Not just
sacrifices were
vacation
made.
time, but our work hours and weekly work schedules.
Vacations,
And
Pregnancy leaves.
I've never been a union member. I will say that out loud, but I know you have been, and I doubt any union member looks forward to being on strike.
Oh, no.
That's a tool in your toolbox that's the last thing you got to do to like twist an arm to.
The first 3 days of 1986 for me was my mother died, my union went on strike, and I got a note in the mail that we were being audited for our income tax. All within the first 3 days of 1986.
Fun week for you.
Man.
But the power or the ability to strike is basic to the powers of unions to negotiate decent wages,
Right.
working conditions, and so forth. And sometimes that has to be done.
Yeah.
Who could strike became an issue for a long, long time. Many years in many places, public employees could not strike. In California, that was not. That was true even to the early 70s or late 60s, and a lot of other things just were not resolved well for them.
My memory is fading a bit these days, but I remember in the rail industry, I think in 34 years, I can kind of remember a couple of strikes that were supposed to happen, but the government intervened because the rail industry was important for the...
It would cripple the economy to
yes.
have that turn off
Now,
even for a day.
Reagan fired a bunch of air traffic controllers
controllers,
for same alleged reason.
Man, yeah.
We, the union I was in, of course, being the cops, we couldn't strike, but so we settled any kind of arbitration problems with arbitration, and we always went to arbitration. I mean, we sent people to negotiate with the state, and the state we could never get it together, so it always went to arbitration.
Mm-hmm.
And this one year we got a contract, and we were funded year to year. Each legislature funded us again. So the next legislature said they weren't going to honor that contract because they didn't sign it. They didn't have anything to do with it, and we had to go all over again. Yeah, and it wasn't like these contracts that we had were taking the guts out of anybody or anything.
Right.
We were being paid a decent wage to do a job that was in many ways very hazardous and problems in other ways. So we were paid, I think, probably more than most police departments, but everybody in Alaska gets paid more than.
You were working in Alaska. That's a 24/7 job, but
Yeah.
your weather's like
Yeah.
pretty rough.
Yeah.
You don't
Right.
Oh, yeah.
get a break from that.
Hazardous pay, driving around in that.
That
kind of
hazard
stuff.
pay.
Oh, yeah. I think about that every now and then, that, I'll start off for someplace and I won't have to worry about the snowstorm or anything. But I did a couple of years ago, coming back from Medford, get caught in a snowstorm. And it took me over 5 hours. I was driving my Thunderbird, which is... You not only don't want to even think about getting a scratch even anywhere near it, and I'm driving a car that is totally not made for snow through the mountains in an area. I have to say that I don't think the people here that do the snow plowing have it down yet. I mean, in Alaska, this would not have been a problem at all. We all just would have zipped home, but 3 or 4 inches of snow on the road, and it was just awful. Till I got to the other side of the mountains or something where they had it sanded, and boy, I could kick it over 15 miles an hour.
Well, we don't get a lot of practice here with that.
No. And the car I was driving is just not made for snow. It's made to be on the road, but not with snow on the road.
Did you at least have the top up?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Just check it.
The other night we came out of the open mic. which I should give a call out to or a shout out to the open mic at the brewery every Thursday night. If you have a talent, you can sing or do something, you can come up there and they'll
Checo
put you,
Brewery.
put you on stage. And
Great place, man.
yeah, and lots of good people are just hanging out there, and it's free.
Is talent required?
I'm sorry?
Is talent required? We can give it a shot. It's open mic,
Well,
right?
I would say about 97%. Every now and then you find a reason to go to the bathroom. But some of the people are really professional. They're very, very good. And some of them do get paid for gigs when they're not doing that.
Right.
Okay, the reason I brought that up,
Back to Labor Day.
I left the house to go, and it was like, I don't know, 70-something degrees and sunny. And I walk out in the garage, and I have an option of taking the convertible or taking the electric car. And I said, oh, the hell with it. I just took the electric car. And when we came out of that thing, it was a mist. It was so heavy, it was like rain, and I've been awful.
Been like that
and,
last couple of days.
and that car, it's a pain to put the top up and take it down. But anyway, that's my labor story.
Okay. All right. Now, not to harp on any, we've done both, but a little bad issue is the labor, especially the unions. I'm thinking back east, of course, the great movie about it now, I can't think of the name, but Marlon Brando.
On the
waterfront.
Yes.
A lot of bad influences on some of those unions back there.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's still a problem or not.
Probably in those days it really
Those
was like
days,
that.
I think it was.
That's a rough part of the world, too.
You bet.
Yeah, and a rough
bet.
job.
Yeah.
And now it's all containers. So,
Well, right. They don't probably have those.
they don't walk around with a
Dock
hook like they used to.
No. So,
I can remember that was one of the jobs when I was a kid going to high school, not planning on going to college. That was an option to me, to go work on the docks or the really good one was work for the airlines, loading baggage and stuff like that, because you could steal so much stuff.
That's a plus.
And they had like a union, like a friend of mine's brother or somebody worked there, and they were loading or doing something, and in the plane they saw a scorpion. Shut down work. They all just sat on their butts for I don't know how long until the plane was fumigated,
but still got paid.
Oh, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Because of a bug.
And there, labor itself, we talk about labor itself, there's just not a lot of that left, I don't think, anymore.
The railroads in Alaska used to have very powerful union, and they had rules like, not only time, but if you drove the train more than
they're
this
under
spot,
hours of service.
Yeah, you went on to another pay. Is that still existing?
Well, I wasn't in that department, but we always looked at them like they were the important people.
Yes,
and we weren't. Yeah, they always had that. And I was lucky towards the end of my career. I was driving a truck at the time, and that fell under the hours of service there.
Yeah,
because I couldn't work. And let me tell you, in the older part of those days, if you were on a big train derailment and there was enough of those, you could work as long as you could stand. But I kind of used that rule as my weapon, because if they wanted me to, you got to go back and load more material or whatever, I'd say, I can't, because I could only work 10 hours.
Yeah.
And come on, that's really logical, I think. You don't want to be driving a truck on the highway or a train, without proper rest.
Yeah.
An interesting thing is a lot of the major battles in labor history are from the Northwest. And in Portland, there was a strike involving shipping, and it was a major event. And at the heart of it became the fact that a railroad series of tracks went to a port in Oakland, and if the railroad could get to the port, then the strike would be hurt. Well, the strikers effectively stopped the railroad from doing that, and that was a big part of the International Longshoremen and Warehouse Union becoming a powerful force.
How
on
long
the
ago
West-
was that? Do you remember?
1920s or 30s.
Oh gosh, okay. Okay. 'Cause I was going to say I don't remember that, but okay, now I know why.
Back a little bit.
No.
And there were other in Spokane. There were some major. I was surprised to learn about that. And San Francisco had a general strike, and before the protections of the Roosevelt era, those strikes were extremely important.
Yeah.
So I just for fun, Rick, I know you're the research guy, but I have this fun little thing on my phone, Chat GPT.
Okay.
And so I asked it, in Curry County, what might we run into as far as unions in
okay.
Curry County? And so
All right.
it spit this back to me. Specific unions active in the area could include, so I'll underline could, the Oregon Education Association, the OEA,
Teachers.
Service Employees International Union, the SEIU,
SEIU,
which
big.
most of us are probably familiar with.
Yeah.
American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, AFSCME. So that represents public sector employees in state, county, and municipal levels. International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. I'm familiar with that one.
Wow.
United Food and Commercial Workers, the UFCW, and the International Longshore and Warehouse Union, ILWU. That tends to, we see those in ports and other related
Yeah, but
industries.
that's all within Curry County?
Yeah.
Might include.
When you mentioned the food workers, it's interesting that Freddy's is not unionized.
Right.
It is in most of the state, and in fact,
I
there
had no idea. Our Brookings Freddy's
is not
Not.
unionized.
I did not know that.
While that union right now is trying to challenge the merger with Safeway and Albertsons and others, and there's actually talk of a strike in the Portland area related to that merger. But Freddy's, I don't know if they're paid less or if they're paid the same or
I didn't.
what have you. But they're definitely not a part of the union.
Okay,
Not
that
a
I
union
didn't
house.
know. We do have a text. I'm going to read a text.
Okay.
And it says, "Thank God the labor landscape has changed from our childhood. Young people now are incredulous when you tell them that jobs used to be listed in the classifieds as men wanted and women wanted. I was hard-pressed for a job after college in 1971, so I stopped at a glass factory that had a help wanted sign. When I asked, I was told that there were no jobs available. I told them that I was asking for my husband. They heartily encouraged me to send him by." Of course.
There you go.
Okay, well, thank you for that text.
I
Didn't
can
know where that
remember
came from.
when they were talking about women starting to do some men jobs, and they would show pictures of Moscow and Russia where women were driving bulldozers and things like that, which seems so foreign to us.
Well, when I first got hired onto the railroad, I don't remember any women on our track labor force, but when I retired, there were truck drivers and bulldozer operators and all of that stuff.
We had about 2 in the whole state. And
Okay.
I worked with, in fact, I went to through the academy with both of them, and they worked out fine. It's people. The one was, I don't think she was 5'6", but she was a tiger. She was tough, and she knew what she was doing. And when women started first becoming cops, they said, "Well, how can a woman get in a fight and this and that?" You don't get in fights. You try to.
have a
I'm very
weapon.
proud of the fact that in my 20-year career, I was in one fight, and I caused it. I
wow.
was a brand new rookie, and I did something stupid. I could have avoided it. And I worked with a partner for many years. She's still my friend, and she could just calm the situation down if we went on a domestic thing or we did whatever. And she just had this way about her of just
Right.
She took
Doing
that
things
class,
that
diplomacy for police officers, right?
It took I'm trying to remember if we had any classes in de-escalation. We must have, but I do not remember them.
I bet you they are now.
Boy, I hope so. And it doesn't seem like de-escalation is 6 rounds. You know.
Oh well, that can work.
That's the
I
old
suppose.
method.
And
But yeah, the women were doing just fine. Now, we kind of had this mandate, sort of, to have a certain percentage of this, certain percentage of that. I don't know if that still goes on with affirmative action type stuff, but we hired some people that were just couldn't do it. We
You gave them a shot.
yeah.
well,
Did they
we
fade
had-
out
we
after
had-
that?
In the pun.
We had to hire a certain percentage of Alaska Natives, as an example, or recruit. I didn't mind the recruiting. I didn't like seeing people who weren't capable of doing the job hired. You know, in Alaska at that time, there were a lot of the villages were extremely remote, and we
Yeah.
would hire people out of these, and we hired people that didn't have a driver's license and things like that, which was one of the requirements, and could not literally come and work effectively in the Anchorage area because they really had never been exposed to that type of thing before. So that was the kind of thing I objected to. But
Well, I mean, of course, that's a whole other show with affirmative action, but I certainly see reasons for that. I mean,
for
even the
affirmative-
railroad had some of that.
I didn't mind affirmative recruitment. I didn't
Okay.
like the idea of
Well,
us
again, if you
filling
can't-
slots just because they.
No, especially in the law enforcement, for
And it
heaven's
did
sake.
nobody any good. You know,
No.
the department wasted a lot of money and wound up letting somebody go eventually who left them, I'm sure, with a lousy feeling for the rest of their life. I don't know.
Yeah.
Another thing we haven't mentioned is the relationship between the labor movement and civil rights.
Oh, that's pretty big.
Well, it's pretty big, and there were problems that some unions were pretty blatantly racist because of their restrictive policies.
Sure.
But there were some that were very important in the civil rights struggle, including United Auto Workers Union,
Farm workers.
farm workers, and in the case of United Auto Workers, Walter Reuther was one of the key speakers at the March on Washington. I happened to have attended it and remember how eloquent his speech was.
Wow.
And the ILWU always had a good record, and most of the public employee unions had good records, teachers and that. But some unions were pretty damn exclusive in what they wanted in their membership, and it's too bad that that's part of our history.
Yeah.
Well, thankfully, it's part of our history,
History.
not currently what
Yeah.
we're doing.
But and it should be brought to the attention of people.
yes.
It's
Not
at
to
least
forget.
part of our history. Boy, we're winding down here in time, so we could
Yeah, if you want to get one of those texts in,
better hurry.
so you can become famous.
541-661-4098. Couple minutes to go. So final thoughts, I guess, on, like I said, Labor Day. Most everybody's probably barbecuing, partying on the beach. I don't know. I had a friend say that she was on the beach yesterday. And this beach isn't Southern California beach, man.
No.
She said there were people with swimming suits and going out, and I don't know. Just a different place. But I know why they want to be here, because it's paradise.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
People actually go in that water. I see that all the time.
I know.
Brr.
No way.
I was walking on the sidewalk there one day, and there was a little girl. Oh, I don't know, maybe like 3, 4, something
Okay.
like that, on a blanket, and you could see her mother, who I assume was her mother, was out swimming, but the girl had 2 pit bulls with her, so I think that she was just very well taken care of.
Oh, well.
Yeah, nobody
Wouldn't
was
want
going
to
to
mess
bother.
with that.
She had her own security detail, huh?
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
Yeah.
Well, I think where we're going lately with our current administration at the national level, working from the middle out and the bottom up to make
Yes.
sure that our families
There's
and
hope out
people
there.
are taken care of, and people are feeling ambitious and joyful
Yes.
and exuberant right
Yes,
now, and we're
I
looking
am.
forward to making this happen.
I think
and
we are.
We're
Right.
seeing some great turnaround in
But,
our unions, from what I can see
yeah.
statistically.
I
Some
hope
really
it's-
good things happening.
I hope it sticks, and we got to get over this little hump.
And with the infrastructure and the chips and all that going on, there's a lot more jobs developing in this country right now.
Yeah, you bet.
A lot of work to be had.
So, well, thank you all for listening to our Labor Day spiel.
Thank you for having us.
And I love having both guests today, Robert O'Sullivan and Brett Cecil, along with our fearless leader, Ray, and myself.
And you have, I think, one more day, and then you got to start putting away your
then we got
white.
to go back to work.
You got to start putting your white clothes away.
Oh,
It's
Ray's
a
really into
grateful
that.
bottle
Well, if you
of
want
white
to say
cloth.
white on, I like my white on
Okay.
clothes.
7 FM.